Okay, it's not quite 8, but we've got everybody here who's going to be here unless you've got somebody coming down. Okay. Why don't we convene? Can you do this?
I can do this, but you have to give these to Sarah, because...
Okay, I've got a bunch of other papers to give her to, so we'll do that. Good, we don't have, we may well have minutes ready, but our secretary is off in Dublin with her daughter, and so we don't have them to vote on as a preliminary matter. Something else preliminary, I mentioned that I received a notice. My name is probably on one of these. And then reviewed it with Ed Marin, and the limit is 250 feet. It appears within 250 feet are potentially affected. And I don't think my house is anywhere close to that as a distance from 33 Maple. But you said that you simply, push the button and everything came up the way it did. This is a machine generated.
Correct.
Not your subjective judgment.
No.
So I don't know why that happened, but in any event, I'll pass it on to Ed and make sure you know that's why that happened.
Okay.
Okay. So you are the goods tonight. Why don't you open up and tell us what you have in mind?
Douglas McClure for the Weymouths at 33 Maple. My clients have an existing attic with an existing stair that goes up to the attic, so it counts for full FAR already. They would like to finish the attic and put their master bedroom up there and a bathroom. So this, although we add dormers, it does not add any FAR to the property. But because a finished attic turns a 2.5-story into a 3-story, we have to get a variance to do that.
And is that because more than 50% of the attic is 7 feet, 7.5 feet?
No.
What's the reason?
The reason is the zoning code only allows for a 2.5-story house.
Right.
For planning board, when you calculate FAR, any attic space that has an existing stair, a full stair that goes up to it, no matter the height of the ceiling, counts as full area for FAR.
Right.
So we have head clearance there to put a room up there, but because it's not finished, we have to finish it, and that finishing the attic makes it a 3-story building.
Where does it say that?
Geez, I don't remember. It's in.
Why does it Ed wrote? I went back and looked at the notes. It's the half-story, which is what you have now,
Correct.
is defined, and I checked this under 224.3. It's defined as he says, any space partially within the roof framing where the clear height of not more than 50% of such space between the top of the floor beams and the structural ceiling level is 7 feet 6 inches or more. So it's a half-story if it's not more than 50%.
Which is true now. That is very true now.
Okay, but the reason it must be a full story is because it's going to be more than 50%?
According to that, yes, but according to my discussions with Ed, even if we went up there and didn't put dormers on there and we finished the attic, it becomes a 3-story building because it's finished space.
Okay,
That's what Ed told me.
yeah, I couldn't,
Because originally when I was talking to my client, I was like, this is fine, it counts as FAR, the volume's fine, we'll have to get planning board approval because we're changing the exterior volume with attic dormers. But it shouldn't be a problem because the area already counts. And then Ed said, no. As soon as you finish the attic, that creates the problem.
but he didn't define why.
He didn't define why.
Okay. On the zoning analysis chart you gave us on SB1,
Yes.
there's no other variance listed as being needed except the conversion from 2.5 to 3 stories.
Correct. The FAR is over, but it's pre-existing non-conforming, so we're not changing the FAR.
Right. I'm noting this only because on a number of applications I've seen where I have made comments or wrote a denial letter. If there were existing coverages in FAR that's over what's permitted, then if you're making other changes, you note those as requiring variance as well.
Right. At the planning board meeting, they said the only variance I required was turning it into from 2.5 to 3 because the FAR didn't change and the coverage didn't change.
Right, and I think we would have noted that favorably anyway.
Yes.
Whatever letter gets written in response to the application, I think we need to say that the existing coverage is 20.5% over,
Correct.
and the existing FAR is 6.89% over,
Correct.
but neither of those are increasing.
Correct.
Okay. All right. I do have an issue in my mind that I'm going to raise in a minute, but I want to, does anybody else have questions they want to ask?
Can you show us, I'm sorry,
No, go ahead.
can you show us what you're doing to the exterior?
Sure.
You're not raising the roof line, correct?
Correct. So, on the front, we're doing a simple gable dormer facing the front.
None exists presently, just the roof.
It's just roof presently. This is the existing roof, the existing ridge line now. On the back, to get some headroom for a closet in the bathroom, we're just doing a simple shed dormer. And again, it doesn't go higher than the existing ridge. The backyard now, you can't actually see the house behind them. There's plantings. So, and this doesn't change the view. It changes the view in that you see your windows, but it doesn't change the view in terms of height and blockage.
And the dormers will be on the east side and the west side, right?
Correct.
Okay.
The other interesting thing is, just talking about 3-story houses on that street, I went through the Greenberg property listings. There are 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 other houses that are officially either fully finished or partially finished. And then as I walked the site, there are some that have, there are windows in all the attics, and some have curtains, and some have fans, and so people are using this space, whether it's legal or not, and I know that's not an argument, but there are other houses that are officially already legal with third floor. No, there are some on, because on the tax rolls as fully finished, they're legal.
Okay. So they are 3-story houses?
They're the same as this. They've just finished their attic. So the attic space is designated as finished.
But as far as we're concerned, or the rules are concerned,
They become 3-story houses, correct?
they are 3-story houses.
Correct.
Okay.
I think that could be a pretty important point.
I think it's very important, because my concern, I was not aware of what you just said. My concern was, if we say yes here, we have to say yes to anybody who wants to come along and do that. And all of a sudden, an area that had been a 2.5-story area becomes a 3-story area.
I understand. So this is, I'm sorry, I put together today. I was thinking this might be a discussion, and I walked up and down the street and seen other houses.
On Maple Street itself.
This is on Maple Street itself. I know there are actually some on some of the adjacent streets too, but I didn't go through that exercise.
I walked up and down too. I wasn't looking for the windows,
Right.
but my sense was what you were doing was going to make it look different from some of those other houses.
Yes, not all of them have dormers at this point, but this house, because of the design of the house with where the gable faces north-south,
Yeah.
which some of the others do, but a lot of them have their dormer on the second floor because the roof comes down all the way, a bunch of them have a front porch where the roof goes all the way up, and they put a dormer there, but they still have space on either side. The one, I don't remember which one, it's across the street and sort of 2 doors down. It's a very large stucco house. That has a fully finished attic.
Are you saying that these houses are legally 3 stories?
Yes. Well, they're listed
In the Greenberg record?
in the Greenberg records, and they're listed as finished.
And which ones are those that are listed officially as 3?
So it's,
Maybe you could explain why some are full-face and some are not.
so I bold-faced the houses that had finished attics, and it's number 36, number 26, number 23, number 19, and number 8.
And that's based on a review of the records of Greenberg, you're saying?
Exactly. And then 20 Station Road, which is the corner, so it's also on, it's the corner of Station and Maple, that also has a partially
But
finished.
you've not checked the records of Irvington to see whether those were through a lawful submission and approval by the zoning board, have you?
No,
You didn't do that?
no. That would take some searching, because not all of, that's a couple hours in the building.
So why would
department.
Greenberg's records be different than?
They shouldn't be.
I was going to say, how do the Greenberg records reflect, how do those records reflect what you
From
have?
what I understand, when you file for a permit, it goes into Greenberg, and that's part of their records, so that's how I would assume it happened, that they're taking the information from our building department. I don't know for sure.
And some of those may have been pre-existing, right?
Some of them may have been
Zoning
pre-existing.
Or zoning coming down in the 50s, so these could have been
Correct.
pre-existing.
Or some of them may have been legalized. It's hard to know.
What is the
Well,
age
it's
of
only
this house?
legal, right?
That's a good question. I would think this is like a 30s.
I'm sorry, you need to explain this a little bit more, because I'm going to put it in the record. I
Okay.
think it's kind of important. There are 5 partially finished or fully finished as listed in the official status column. Are those the 5 that are reflected as 3-story in Greenberg's
Correct.
records? Okay.
Well, Greenberg's record says first floor, second floor, attic. And so it says a finished attic, partially finished attic, no attic, or unfinished attic.
And you're interpreting fully finished attic?
Well, by our code,
To mean 3 stories?
that's what it means.
Okay. And you see,
That's how our code reads.
okay, where is that? The fully finished attic means is a 3rd story.
Again, this is what Ed was telling me, so he didn't refer me to a specific section of the code.
As I understood what he was telling me, it was, number 1, that he'd written a letter about it.
Right.
And all I see in the letter is that half-story
Yes, I
definition by
understand.
negative implication, full story means not that.
Correct.
But I think he said to me something like, if your floor space in the attic you're developing is more than half of the floor space in the level below, then it counts as a 3rd story. Now, that may be a slightly garbled interpretation of this 50%.
I don't understand that.
Okay, that makes 2 of us. Mr. Secretary, can I add that to your, and ask any questions you need to help us describe it later? If you do.
No, I got it.
Okay.
So the record's clear that there's no proof today that any building on that street has been approved as a 3-family.
3-story.
3-story.
I'm sorry, 3-story building. Right. What may be there factually is one thing, but there's nothing that shows that any of those properties have been approved as a 3-story structure. Correct?
Well, if that's the case, then everyone can grieve their properties and say this isn't a 3-story building because it's not legally shown as that.
I don't know what the record's saying, Greenberg, quite honestly, so, and I hear what you say, but.
No, I meant, but they could say, look, the building department shows this as a 2.5-story, why, you should be taxing me as a 2.5-story, so there must be some kind of relationship there.
I guess the record at best is incomplete with this issue, I think.
I mean, when I went over this, once I realized I wasn't recused, what bothered me was what John was speaking about, because, I mean, subjectively, I'm sure this is a great plan, and I'm sure it would make every bit of a difference to the folks who own the house to have it built out this way. And it's not gonna have any impact externally that I can see that's substantial. You've got dormers on both sides,
Right.
but not blocking anybody's view unless they're looking north or south. But the problem I have with it is if the code says 2.5 stories and not 3, and we permit 3 stories in this instance, why isn't that a precedent that's going to affect every property in Irvington that's so situated? And there are lots of them, I believe. Can you help me with that?
Well, I would say is if it's not affecting the existing volume of the house in terms of raising its height, as you said, why is that an issue?
Because the trustees wrote the code to say it is.
Yes, but the code, you also are in the position to interpret the code in ways that are beneficial to people in the village, right?
But the problem is that if we interpret the code to say, yeah, you can do that, we in effect change the code.
Well, that's what every variance is. Every variance is a change of the
I'm
code.
saying we're changing, I don't know the right words, we're in effect changing the regulation. That whole area here that's 2.5 stories now becomes 3 stories.
But here's the
And anybody can come in and say.
I understand,
Yeah.
but what is the detrimental effect?
Whatever the trustees saw that we're not able to specify.
I think the difference, for me, the difference between what you started with and what I'm reading here, and I can't say I understand completely what the rule is. If the rule is simply unfinished versus finished, I have one opinion. If the rule is you're only entitled to a 2.5 story house, and a half story is defined as not more than 50% of the house of usable space, that's 2.5 story house. And then you're actually changing the building in a material way. And I'm not sure that we can give you a variance on. I mean, you're not asking for a foot, or, you're saying, I want to go to a 3-story house, not a 2.5-story house. Again, I would not be bothered if you told me it was, all you wanted to do was finish it, because we've been in that situation before. But you're making it bigger. The reason it's going to become a 3-story.
I'm adding headroom.
You're making more than 50% of the space where the top floor and the floor and the ceiling are more than 7 feet 6 inches. Right? That's what's happening here.
Yes.
That's what's cited as a footnote here.
Yes.
That's the language of the code. So that's got to be what he's basing this on. That's his reason for you needing the variance.
Okay.
Although it's interesting because I was looking at the definitions in the code,
Right.
and the definition of half-story makes no reference to finishing or not finishing.
Exactly.
So,
Yeah.
But there's a rule about stairs, which you already have.
Right.
right.
We've been there before.
Yeah.
So, I mean, as you said, certainly finishing the space wouldn't add a story.
No, it's the availability of more than 50% of this new construction, as a result of this new construction being 7.5 feet or more. I mean, that's got to be the problem. That's what he's citing here, and that's what's in the code.
Okay. I get that. All I can speak to is what I was told by Ed was that by doing this, we're making it a 3rd story.
Yeah.
And so when I look at additional houses around the area, they have that same condition
Is the headroom 7.5 feet
to the ridge.
tall? But is it 50% over 7.5 on the ones that in the Greenberg are coded 3-story or on the right? We don't know.
I would have to go and do a survey of, if they have dormers up there, et cetera.
So
I know
now-
some of them do facing the river.
So how much over 50% will you now be?
I would have to do it. That wasn't my concern at the time because that wasn't how it was presented to me, so I don't have that calculation.
Areas if you were.
Right.
60% over, maybe that wouldn't be a big deal, and
Oh,
I'm just.
I'm probably more than 50%, because I have the whole back, and that would be 50%.
Yeah, and if you're gonna make it, I mean, this is gonna be a master bedroom, and
You're already 50% probably, or, no,
No, because right now, this is 7.6,
okay.
so everything I'm adding here and here is additional.
right, right.
Right, so it'd be a very small portion of the existing that is less than 7.6.
Right, that's why it's changing.
I mean,
From
more
2.5
than 7.6.
2.5 to 3.
So with the front of the house, when you have that cute little
Yes.
dormer there now, but could you have made that straight across, from one end to the end, the other side? with-
I could have, but the architectural review board would have ripped me a new one.
Yeah,
so-
but we're not worried about that. My point is, you could have made that, be granted, and if the ARB changed their mind or whatever, you could really make that look into a 3-story, right across 3 buildings, right, with 3 floors, I should say, with windows right across the front of that building. Once it met the ARB's standards. And I guess that would change I think, the dynamic of the neighborhood if you did that. But by doing what we're doing, if we did approve that, that gives you a license to do that the next time around, wouldn't it? Subject to the ARB's approval.
Correct.
And the planning board,
And the planning
And the
board.
planning board.
yeah. I mean,
There's 3 different entities that are controlling this, so, you do have to have some faith in the other guys, too.
no, they weren't passing on this. We're the only ones who passed on this.
No, but you could give me a variance, and the ARB could say, we do not like how this looks,
Right.
and I have to go back and redo it.
That's possible, sure.
And the planning board also often chimes in on that as well.
Yeah.
And what is the status of the planning board?
They had asked, I have to go back because I'd left off the garage area on the FAR, and they didn't feel they could pass me with that, but Ed felt that it wasn't a problem, that they would pass me at the next.
Also, the Hahn Engineering letter made some reference to you needing to add to your FAR because
That was the garage,
that was the garage.
yes. I had it on coverage, but somehow I left it off on the FAR calculation.
And you're still under the limit if you add that to FAR?
The chart you saw is with the garage added.
Okay.
Well, they're over allowable
Yeah,
across the
yeah,
board.
but they're not
There's,
increasing it.
yeah, still no increase.
Right. This is my last meeting,
Mine
and,
too.
and yours too. But there are,
That's on the record.
I believe I told 1 or 2 of you, I haven't told everybody. Sarah's coming back, of course, and I think we now have 2 more people who are going to be on the board, so we're not going to be without people sitting up here to handle these problems. For myself, I am really bothered by the idea that if we let you do this, we will have to let everybody do this, because there's no distinction. It's just grant 3 stories when somebody does this, and that's not what the code says. It may be a perfectly good candidate, this topic may be a perfectly good candidate for the trustees to relook at it, because maybe the architects in the village who so often do this kind of work can make points that will convince them that the limitation is not necessary. But that's just, as I see it, that's just not our job.
So, in terms of the 5 points that you have to look at,
Right.
where is this off?
It's off because of the effect, in my view, the effect it will have on other properties in other areas, not just here, not just Maple Street, in Irvington, that will be affected by the precedent, because it's setting aside an element of the code that, for whatever reason, the trustees thought was significant.
So then let me ask a different question. If I did a small addition, 2-story addition in the back that could be within a range of square footage that you might do, like you've seen, I've gotten approvals for additions before
Sure.
that are smaller and get the variant, they can get the variance. increasing the FAR and coverage would be preferable to turning this into a 3-story?
It would depend, as always, on how much. The difference, it's a very good question, but what occurs to me about this is when we're dealing with questions of space, coverage or FAR, coverage in particular, you're always dealing with what percentage in excess of what's allowed is requested. And how does that fit in with the neighborhood? Are there trees that are blocking things that may be added, stuff like that? So it's a counterbalancing thing. What's the bad, what's the good, and you reach a judgment. But this one it's either or. It's either your 2.5 stories going to 3, and that's okay. And if it's okay for you, why would it not be okay for everybody else? That's what would the distinction be?
I would, from my own perspective, the way, you're not going to get it here, but if you were to present it as, I'm only allowed to be 50% over, my roof is only, my attic space is only allowed to be 50%, and I'm going to 55.
Right.
I might personally, I can't speak thoroughly, agree to that as a variance.
Right. If it was
So you're, again, from my perspective, you're going from 2.5 stories, which is allowable here, to 3 stories, which is not allowable here. I don't feel comfortable giving you that variance. You know what I mean? And that's
Well, but they're both the same variance. You're just looking for numbers to make it 50%, a little over 50%, because that still becomes...
You would need a variance for that.
Right.
And that would be considered, but somehow, again, I'm not voting on that, so maybe I could change my mind. But I'm thinking that would be something that I could look at, but similarly to when you come here and say that you want to exceed, you need to be 1 foot closer to the property line.
Right.
And I say, well, it's not affecting anybody, it's not significant, the benefit to you is greater than the impact of somebody else. I could look at it that way. But here, I agree with Bruce. If you say I'm building a 3-story house in that neighborhood, I'd say no. If you say I'm going over by, a foot of what you otherwise consider to be a 3-story house, I could.
I find that an interesting argument because essentially this changes the house very little. All it's changing is a number, a 2.5 story to 3. But the house itself is not substantially different. Whereas if I put an addition on, the house is substantially different.
I agree with everything you said, but I also agree with Bruce's point. I think if we say yes to you, we've in effect changed the rules for Irvington, and it's not our job. I mean, maybe they should be changed. Maybe they should be changed. Let me suggest this, and I guess I'm known for kicking the can down the road, but let me suggest this, because I think at least 3 of us, and maybe
No,
you've heard from 3 of us.
I'm more interested in the discussion right now than the...
What I would suggest is 2 things. Number 1, I think the board, as a group, needs a better explanation of why Ed dinged this.
Understandable.
Okay? And number 2, taking Evan's point, I think it would be worthwhile, regardless of how that comes out. I mean, if there's not a basis in the code for what he said, and you're not really above 7.5 feet on 50% or more of your attic, it looks like you are. But it might help if you gave us specific numbers.
I think that makes sense, yes.
Okay, that's 2. And 3, I think the information you've given us about the extra houses, the other houses on Maple Street, would be of interest to any group that's going to be the zoning board, no matter who's sitting up here. And, I mean, you've been at Irvington a long time. Everybody knows you to be a man of good character and all of that.
Thank you.
But I think, this is information you have come upon lately. And it might also be helpful to be able to figure out what the background is to the 3 to 5 houses you've identified on Maple Street alone that may have a similar situation.
Okay.
And the good news is you would have 2 months to do this, because you don't have a hearing until.
Right.
And just to add to that also, I don't think that this request applies to such a unique property as so singular in nature that it is such a general issue across the board that it would be such a sweeping, which is what you guys have been saying throughout the evening, our decision would be so sweeping. And we give almost everybody license to do this, and we'd have a hard time saying no in the future.
You could just build a 3-story house, not a 2.5-story house. Anybody could, right? And that would be the answer to that.
Well, no, because the code says you can't. You'd have to go for a variance for that to do it. So, but yes, you'd have a trouble with precedent. But you would also probably have an issue with FAR off the bat. This is unique in that this is really particular to the village and the Tree Streets and East Irvington, because the properties are so small that there's very little way for families to expand in any way.
Yeah, I asked Ed about that, where there would be houses that the precedent might affect, and he thought Main Street, the Main Street area in Irvington, as well as the ones you identified.
Right.
So I think it's a real.
And Main Street actually has a bunch of houses that are definitely already there.
Yeah, yeah. So that's my suggestion. I hate to sort of anticlimactic as a way to exit, but I think it's for the good of the village and getting this to be clear. Is there anybody who would object to that? Would you object to that?
No, I don't.
Okay, so why don't we, I'll move to adjourn. Do I have a second?
I'll second that.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
All right, great.
Thank you very much.
Okay, and if, I'm sure you and Ed will be talking, and
I'm sure we will.
yeah, and I'll explain this to him.
Yeah.
And see if we can get to the bottom of, maybe he can help you out with the third issue, the records of the other
Oh,
Main Street houses.
yeah, that's just a very long, intensive search and trying to find what's digitized and what's not.
And he may have, I mean, you know your area here, but he may have some thoughts about how to get that more
Yeah.
easily.
You can't just pull the property cards for each of those that you think.
That's what I did to get the information I gave you. Those are all property
And that's what it
cards.
says. It just
Yeah.
says finished.
Yeah. It doesn't say if they're permitted or not permitted or.
Although I think, just not speaking to these properties generally, but I think people would be a little, I mean, declaring things for tax purposes would not be your first move, shall we say.
Right.
Please tax me
Yeah.
more.
Right. And
Most
then I'll
people would
think
tend to
about just
hide
where-
that.
Yeah.
That's what I was trying to say earlier. Most people would tend to hide their finished attics.
Yeah. Very good.
Thank you very much.
Very cynical of accurate judgment, I'm afraid. Thanks a lot.
Have a lovely Thanksgiving.
You too, thank you.
Well, thank you, Bruce.
Goodbye, brother.
All right,
We'll see you on the train. That's
Also.
great to work with you, however briefly.
Thank you for your service, as you would say.
Yeah.
At least 10 years, huh?
Yeah, oh, yeah. I think it's Senator.
I know you already
I know
did this,
you
but
have.
it should be like, you know, right there or something like that.
Do you know Kathy?
I know Kathy,
Yeah.
yes.
And you know she sent a note.